Hi there, I'm Smale. Welcome to my channel. If you are a beginner, intermediate, or more advanced player, and you want to know a little bit more about jazz phrasing, then stick around. Classical musicians and jazz musicians might differ slightly when it comes to phrasing, but usually the concept is the same. The only difference is stylistically. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines phrasing as 1. Style of expression. 2. The act, method, or result of grouping notes into musical phrases. All true, but rather a lackluster definition, don't you think? So let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. What I like to do is think of music as a language. It could be in written form, just as any language, or spoken form. But really try to think of it as a language. You know, you're communicating some ideas, and you're breaking up your ideas into sort of pieces of information that people, when they listen, they can digest that information, process it, and then go, okay, give me something else. You know, our brain and our ears can work very quickly, so you don't need to leave 30 seconds between your phrases. Just breaking it up into some kind of logic that our brain picks up on, the listener likes. Classical musicians might tend to think of phrasing more in the written form, especially when they're first learning a piece, and can create little nuances as far as phrasing goes when they're performing it. But as far as jazz musicians go, we think of phrasing when it comes to improvisation when we're soloing over a set of chord changes. Think of phrasing very much like speaking. You wouldn't say, Jane went to the store and bought some milk, because that just sounds very William Shatner-esque, actually. You gotta love Bill. You know, if you think of each word that I just said in that way and how odd it sounded, that would be like speaking one note at a time and not running your notes together in a phrase. Jazz musicians and classical musicians would probably agree on is that you want to make your ideas smooth. Think of a phrase as being a musical sentence, kind of just the way I'm speaking to you right now. I'm chopping my words into phrases. I'm saying something, there's a pause, then I say something else, which gives you, the listener, time to digest what I'm saying and agree or disagree or expect something to come next. And that expecting something to come next is very crucial in music. That's how you sort of lead the listener along to create interest. And think of your playing as telling a story, and you will become much closer to understanding jazz phrasing. You might play something louder or softer or slightly faster, slightly slower. That's what I'm talking about. But those little nuances are what is the most important thing, actually. Listen to your favorite master musician that you really enjoy their playing. You don't even have to take the whole solo, although that is something down the road that you could do, but take a phrase that you really like. It speaks to you in some way. Start with that. Maybe if you have a way of putting that on loop or just taking that, cutting that example out of a recording and keep looping it and listening to it and sing along to it. Sing along to the phrase. It can be just do da be do ba do be do ba. It doesn't, you don't have to necessarily sing the pitch. It's the inflections that's the most important here. So if you listen to, say, a Charlie Parker solo, listen to the lines. It was I mean, that's not necessarily a Charlie Parker phrase, but what I was singing there, some parts were coming out louder, accented, and some weren't. That's the little things that you want to get into your playing. So sing along to it, and then try to mimic that phrase on your instrument. Maybe you might hear a phrase like this, ba-doo ba-doo beep beep dop, and maybe that might be like this, and that now you're starting to get into that territory, even if it's that small little phrase. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about. And this is how a lot of jazz musicians used to learn stuff from recordings. It's just singing along to their favorite solos. And it's the phrasing that's more important than the note choices per se. Of course, you do want to play the right notes, but what we're talking about is phrasing, not note choices. Maybe that'll be coming up in a video down the road.
I'd like to stick in a question, if I may. I'd like to know why there was this violent change, really. After all, up until this time, the way to play the alto sax was the way that Johnny Hodges and Benny Carter played alto. And this seems to be an entirely different conception, not just of how to play that particular horn, but music in general.
Yeah, how to play any horn.
I don't think there's any answer to.
It's just the way you
speaking, John. Yeah, that's what I said when I first started talking. That's my first conception, man. That's the way I thought it should go, and I still do. I mean, of course, it could stand much improvement. Most likely in another 25 or maybe 50 years, some youngster will come along and take the style and really do something with it, But, I mean, ever since I've ever heard music, I thought it should be very clean, very precise, as clean as possible anyway, And more or less to the people, something they could understand, something that was beautiful, Because definitely there's stories and stories and stories that can be told in a musical idiom, You wouldn't say idiom either. It's so hard to describe music other than the basic way to describe it. Music is basically melody, harmony, and rhythm. But, I mean, people can do much more with music than that. It can be very descriptive in all kinds of ways, All walks of life. Don't you agree, Paul?
Yeah, and you always do have a story to tell. It's one of the most impressive things about everything I've ever heard of yours.
Well, that's more or less the object. That's what I thought it should be.
Uh-huh. Another thing that's been a major factor in your playing is this fantastic technique that nobody's quite equaled. And I always wondered about that, too, whether there was, whether that came behind practicing or whether that was just from playing, whether it evolved gradually.
Well, you make it so hard for me to answer, because I can't see where there's anything fantastic about it at all. I put quite a bit of study into the horn, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the neighbors threatened to ask my mother to move once when I was living out west. I mean, they said I was driving them crazy with the horn. I used to put in at least from 11 to 15 hours a day.
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
Well, that's true, yes. I did that for over a period of 3 or 4 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
I guess that's the answer.
Well, that's the facts anyway.
Yeah. I heard a record of yours a couple of months ago that somehow I've missed up to date, and I heard about a 2-bar quote from the Close A book. It was like an echo from home.
Oh. Yeah. Well, it was all done with books, Naturally, it wasn't done with mirrors. This time it was done with books.
That's very reassuring to hear, because somehow I got the idea that you were just sort of born with that technique, and you never had to worry too much about keeping it working.
You know, I'm very glad that he's bringing out this point, because I think a lot of young musicians tend to think that,
Yeah, they do. They just
that it
go
isn't
out,
necessary to do this.
go out and make those sessions and live the life, but they don't put in that 11 hours a day with any of the books.
Oh, definitely. Study is absolutely necessary in all forms. It's just like any talent that's born within somebody. It's just like a good pair of shoes when you put a shine on it, you know? Like schooling brings out the polish, you know, of any talent that happens anywhere in the world. Einstein had schooling, but he has a definite genius, you know, within himself. Schooling's one of the most wonderful things there's ever been, you know?
I'm glad to hear you say this.
That's absolutely right.
One really, really good thing that I would suggest that anyone start doing to help your phrasing is to sing along while you're playing. It could be any set of chord changes that you're working on, let's say, and you're specifically maybe want to be working on your phrasing. I had the good fortune to study with a guy by the name of Joey Goldstein in Toronto. He studied in the 70s with Pat Metheny at Berklee College. And Joey told me that Pat was always very, very big on singing everything that you play. And I really took that to heart. And if you were to come see me play a gig here in New York, you very well could likely see me actually sing along while I'm playing. I find that even when I'm playing live, really helps me stay on track and phrase well and timing and everything and rhythms and stuff like that. You may know of some musicians who do this already. George Benson has been known to do that quite a bit. Off the top of my head, definitely Kurt Rosenwinkel does this type of thing. Matter of fact, that's a part of his sound. Lots of times in recordings and live, you might see a lavalier mic on his collar, and he is singing along with what he's playing. And I'm sure he probably would agree with many of the things that I'm saying. I haven't talked to him about that, but I'm sure that he would have roughly the same idea. Singing along with your lines really helps eliminate the bullshit. You know, you might be playing all the right notes, but it's you know, maybe your lines are just not happening. And I really truly believe that singing along will really actually help in many, many ways. Another byproduct of singing along with your lines is you'll begin to start hearing things in your mind, in your inner ear, shall we say, and you'll be able to more easily perform them on your instrument. And that's what it's really all about, isn't it? You hear an idea and you're able to play it right away. It doesn't have to be anything super, super complicated at first to work on your phrasing, because maybe at first you don't want to be thinking too much about the chord changes. Maybe it's a song that you know really, really well. Let's take a standard that everyone probably is familiar with, like Autumn Leaves, and let's try. I'll demonstrate the singing along with my soloing part. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. translated well, that is a good demonstration of something that you can do in your practice session. So remember, it's all about speaking. So that's why I'm suggesting to speak or sing what you play. Let's recap. Listen to your favorite jazz musicians on recordings. Sing their phrases. Try to copy their phrases. Like I said, remember, it doesn't have to be the exact notes. It can be the same notes if you want, but it doesn't have to be. Like, maybe you can put your own notes to their rhythms and their articulations. And then lastly, sing what you're playing. That will tremendously help. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if this is the first time you're here. Make sure that you hit that bell notification icon so that you're notified of when I have more videos come out. You can visit me on Instagram at Smale. Please like and comment. Maybe there's some ideas of phrasing that I didn't mention here. List those down below. I would love to hear your ideas that maybe I can incorporate into my practice routine. Thanks a lot. Take care.